therefore say today we are gathered here for the public participation, I think the final stages of public participation on the draft election campaign financing regulations 2026. I say regulations because the Election Campaign Finance Act is already in place. And what we are required, as directed by the courts, is to ensure that the campaign financing regulations are in place, are approved, gazetted, and therefore implemented accordingly. So we are looking at the campaign finance regulations and also the proposed contribution and spending limits, which the law directs the Commission to set. The manner in which contributions are made, but also the spending limit for the money that is raised for political campaigns. So at the outset, I would like to express the Commission's appreciation to all the members of the public, both present here and those that participated in the various regions where we held the public forums. And we thank you, of course, for honoring our invitation and making time to participate in this engagement. Indeed, your presence is a clear demonstration of the importance attached to the electoral reforms that we are spearheading as a commission towards the strengthening of Kenya's democratic processes. In the same breath, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot therefore fail to express our profound gratitude to those institutions that have been supportive to us in the course of undertaking this assignment. And that includes special mention to Transparency International, Kenya, chapter, and LGR, who have been partnering with us to ensure this invaluable support in undertaking this very important and yet costly process. Your steady, fast partnership and commitment to promoting transparency, accountability, and integrity in the electoral processes in Kenya are deeply appreciated. Ladies and gentlemen, as has been highlighted before, Article 88.4.1 of the Constitution bestows on the Commission the mandate to regulate the amount of money that may be spent by or on behalf of a candidate or a political party in respect of any elections in Kenya. This is a mandate that the Commission has taken seriously since the enactment of the Election Campaign Financing Act in 2013. The journey towards the full implementation of the Election Campaign Finance Act has been progressive and marked by important milestones. The Commission has, over the years, undertaken extensive efforts to develop the necessary regulatory framework, including conducting stakeholder consultations in preparation for both the 2017 and 2022 general elections. So this is not the first, and it shall not be the last attempt by the Commission to ensure the full implementation of the Campaign Finance Act 2013. While these efforts encountered legal and procedural hurdles, they provided us with valuable lessons that have informed the current reform processes. Today's engagement, therefore, is a critical step towards ensuring that we can finally, I hope, and we hope as a Commission, realize the constitutional promise of election campaign financing regulations for the 2027 general elections. As I've said, let me emphasize, our attempts to ensure the implementation of the Campaign Finance Act has faced those legal challenges, and we hope this time, through this process, we shall overcome those challenges and we shall implement these regulations in the coming elections of 2027. We hope that this will also be an opportunity to ensure that the proposed regulatory framework is practical, responsive, and reflective of the views of those who will be directly affected by its implementation. That includes the political parties and the candidates. And of course, the implementation of these regulations will also have impact to the larger Kenyan community and our democratic processes. Since our coming into office last year, ladies and gentlemen, the Commission has undertaken a series of engagements with the various stakeholders, and we've had these consultations, technical meetings, and reviews to refine our proposed regulations and spending limits. So this journey started already as soon as we came to office, and it's at this juncture that we hope that we will complete this journey through these final consultative forums so that we beat the deadlines that have been set. So we are required to actually gazette these regulations. Once we consolidate your views and put everything together in one package, we are supposed to approve these regulations at plenary so that we gazette them and we share them with Parliament, the Committee on Delegated Legislation, and we make preparations towards implementing them ahead of the general elections in 2027. So we are looking at a timeline of August this year. Ladies and gentlemen, the draft election campaign financing regulations 2026 seek to provide clarity on key aspects of campaign financing. These regulations will give us clarity on the appointment and registration of authorized persons, those people who are authorized to regulate the campaign financing. It will also give us clarity on the opening and management of campaign financing accounts. For us to monitor, we will require political parties and candidates to have specific accounts opened where we can monitor the amount of resources that they use during the campaigns. It will also provide us a framework for the recording and reporting of contributions and donations. You know, if, for example, in the US, during elections, there are individuals or organizations that contribute resources to the various political parties to use during their campaigns. So in the case of Kenya, in the course of regulating this, we will also require the candidates and political parties to record and report those contributions and donations they receive towards campaign financing. The regulations will also help us to regulate campaign expenditures. We will know whether the candidates or the political parties are within the range of the spending limits or they have exceeded the spending limits. That's why these regulations are very important to give us guidance on how we are going to regulate the expenditure around the campaigns by candidates and by their political parties. The regulations also will require disclosure and auditing of campaign finances. At the tail end of it all, we should be able to know how much, based on the reporting and the disclosures, how much have the political parties or candidates spent, and of course auditing of those finances in terms of the sources and the manner in which the finances were deployed. Lastly, the regulations will also provide us with mechanisms for compliance, enforcement, and dispute resolution. Ladies and gentlemen, similarly, the proposed contributions and spending limits. So we have the regulations, and together with the regulations, we have proposals also on contribution and spending limits. So you're looking at the regulations which are broader, but In these discussions, we also need to discuss the aspect of contributions and also the spending limits. So these contribution and spending limits are intended to promote fairness, transparency, accountability, and to create a level playing field in the electoral competition. So our objective is to ensure that we set the contributions and spending limits in order to create a level playing field for everybody who is contesting. These limits also seek to ensure that electoral outcomes are determined by the free will of the people rather than by the disproportionate influence of financial resources. You see, the Constitution tells us that elections must be by universal suffrage, the equality of the vote, transparent, free, fair, credible, accountable, all those principles of the Constitution. If we let money distort the will of the people, then we will be running against the Constitution and the principles enshrined in that Constitution for a free and fair election or electoral processes. So the role of finances in influencing elections and the free will of the people is the main objective as to why we are here, to look at how best we can regulate that aspect of our democracy. At the same time, the proposed limits recognize the legitimate need for political parties and candidates to effectively communicate their policies, programs, and manifestos to the electorate. And therefore, the objective is not to constrain political party participation, but to strike an appropriate balance between facilitating meaningful campaigns and safeguarding the integrity, fairness, and the credibility of the electoral process. So I think what we need to get very clearly is the need to strike that balance, to give the citizens of Kenya the opportunity as of free will to elect their leaders without the disproportionate influence of money or financing. At the same time, not to constrain the political parties and the candidates from having that opportunity and the logistics to ensure that they sell their policies and programs and manifestos to the electorate. So that's the thin balance. We don't want to constrain them, but at the same time, we don't want them to overwhelm the electorate with perhaps a lot of money to influence the electoral outcomes. So we need as Kenyans to balance, to strike that very delicate balance. I wish to assure you, ladies and gentlemen, and indeed the entire nation, that the Commission approaches this process with an open mind. So we are here, we are not prescriptive. We have not come here with a predetermined mind or set of things or regulations and spending contribution or spending limits. We are here with an open mind, knowing that we are a public commission, a public entity, supported by you, the taxpayers of Kenya, to do a particular job. And when such a sensitive and emotive issue comes on the table for us to make decisions on, we've brought it to you, and we've brought you together here and across the country to give us your views on how to tackle this subject. So these draft instruments, both the regulations and the proposed contribution and spending limits, are still in draft form. And we hope with your support and with your input, we should be able to move towards finalizing them just in time for us to implement those regulations and spending limits. And therefore, it is in that regard that we are here this morning to listen. I think Commissioner Lutala said, today, all ears, yes, Maskio too. So we are here to listen to you to give us feedback and for us to consolidate your feedback alongside other inputs from across the country as we finalize the regulations and the spending and the contribution and spending limits. So we are here in good faith, we are here with an open mind, and we are here very much expectant of the fact that you will, as Kenyans, give us your views and thoughts, ideas, whether controversial or not controversial. Who are we to determine whether they are controversial or not controversial? So we recognize that the electorate and the general public play a critical role in the democratic process, and therefore your experiences and observations during the electoral campaigns provide observations during campaigns provide valuable insights into the realities of campaign financing. I think Judge shared the experience of Kalau according to his classmate, and that there are those of the school of thought that the Kenyan voter is so enlightened that whatever you do, they will still vote their conscience. Then there are those of the view that the Kenyan voter may need some incentivizing for them to turn up and vote. So it's normally, it's a very, very delicate. So your views and recommendations will therefore be instrumental in helping the Commission develop a campaign financing framework that is constitutionally sound, practical, and responsive to the realities of Kenya's electoral environment. And we are not doing this for another country. We are doing for our country because we are unique. We understand our country, we understand our electoral environment, and we understand what is it that we must do as Kenyans to ensure that that environment is conducive for all of us to exercise our democratic rights under Article 38, which is to exercise our right to vote or to stand for elective positions. As I conclude, I therefore urge that we engage candidly, constructively, and respectfully during these deliberations. Let us focus on the substance of the proposals and work together to build a campaign financing regime that enhances public confidence in our elections and that strengthens Kenya's democracy. As we look towards 2027, which is fast closing in, we came to office last year. We are now in office for 1 year and 2 weeks. We thought we had a lot of time, but now we are left with almost 1 year to 2027. So as we race towards 2027 general election, we need to assure Kenyans that we assure Kenyans that we remain committed to ensuring that all the legal and regulatory reforms are undertaken in a timely, inclusive, and transparent manner. We believe that through collaboration with the public, political parties, and other stakeholders, we can establish a robust campaign financing system and frameworks that upholds the principles of constitutionalism, accountability, and electoral integrity. It is now, ladies and gentlemen, my distinct honor and privilege to officially declare this consultative forum on the draft election campaign financing regulations and the proposed contribution and spending limits officially open. I wish you fruitful deliberations, and I look forward to your valuable contributions. May God bless you, and may God bless our country, Kenya. So, hayo ndio hayo kwa campaign financing and campaign regulations. I will not add anything beyond that. So, allow me also to address an issue that has been vexing us since yesterday, and since members of the fourth estate are here, We value your contribution and your role in the democratic journey of the Republic of Kenya. Yesterday, we woke up to the headlines, to the news that IEBC has made proposals to stop live streaming of election results. And I can see the internet is abuzz with all that. I would like to assure the people of Kenya that there is nothing like that whatsoever. That IEBC, this commission, stands for transparency and accountability. And we will be the last people to make any decision or any proposals to stifle the freedom of media to check what we are doing, including live streaming of the election processes. So whoever manufactured that story, we need to know where they found those stories from. But as IEBC, we want to state here categorically that we have not made any such decision, neither have we made any proposals to Parliament to try and stop live streaming. If anything, the last time I checked, we converged here at Pullman Hotel with the Kenya Media Sector Working Group. That group brings together the Kenya Union of Journalists, the Kenya Editors Guild, and everybody in the media sector. And we signed an MOU in front of the media that, among other things, enables us to collaborate and partner with the media, for the media to scrutinize, for the media to work with us to ensure that we educate and inform Kenyans on all the processes that we are undertaking as a commission, including the live streaming of our election processes. And you have seen it even during the by-elections. The media has been there, and they have been a very important partner to us in informing and showing Kenyans every process we're doing. Whether at the polling station or at the tallying centers, the media has always been there, and it shall continue to be there as long as we work in this commission and we serve the interests of the public and the Kenyans. So we want to condemn those ones, those people who are propagating that misinformation and propaganda, and we want to tell those people that in as much as they have the freedom to publish anything, they should know that anything that undermines the integrity of our elections stands condemned by this commission. So I would like to end there. So I hope our members of the fourth estate present here will communicate to Kenyans in equal measure that there's nothing like that whatsoever. And our result transmission, when the time comes, we will communicate to Kenyans on how they will get their results. And they'll be there with us as partners. Thank you very much.
Let's appreciate Chairman once more. Asante sana. We will be proceeding to the presentations. And before then, allow me to recognize the institutions that have just joined us. We have the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, the Judiciary Commission on Elections, the Office of Registrar of Political Parties. We also have Vision Limited with us, Association of Media Women in Kenya, Katiba Institute, the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, IPOA, and we have various journalists in the house drawn from media stations across Kenya. Karibuni sana. I'll be inviting the chair of the session, who is our Deputy Commission Secretary, and he is also the chairperson of the engagements on campaign financing, Mr. Badia Petani.
Thank you, Chairman and Commissioners. It is now the time to do the presentation. The presentation is in two parts. The first part is touching on the highlights on the draft regulations, and the second part is on the proposed formula and limits. So we have delegated to two presenters. The first part will be done by Ruth Makutu on the draft regulations, and the second part on the formula and limits will be done by Victoria Cheke. So allow me now to welcome Ruth Makutu to take us in the first presentation on the draft regulations. Karibu, Ruth.
Thank you, DCS. Chairperson, Vice Chair, Commissioners, our invited guests, good morning. Good morning, it's a good day. Thank you. I will, just like I've been instructed, I'll give us a highlight of the election campaign financing draft regulations, given that they had been shared to us. And just like Commissioner Lutalala has mentioned, that we are here to listen more than to talk. So I'll just give a highlight of what the proposals are in the draft campaign regulations. So the presentation, the next, scroll through, okay. So the table of contents, we have the legal and constitutional mandate as the first part, the legislative history of the ECF Act. We also are going to discuss the court determinations and highlight the ECF regulations, and finally highlights of the formula and the spending limits. I'll start with the legal and constitutional mandate. Article 88, 4I of the Constitution of Kenya mandates IEBC to regulate the amount of money that may be spent by a political party or a candidate in an election. Parliament enacted the ECF Act in 2013, 9 months after the general election following the 4th March 2013 general election. And following that, the Commission commenced the process of preparing the regulations. The Act regulates the management, expenditure, and accountability of campaign funds during general elections, by-elections, and any referenda. It establishes the administrative and compliance framework grounded specifically in self-regulation by candidates and political parties under the supervision and enforcement by the IEBC. For the objectives of regulating campaign financing, it is a necessary regulation but extremely challenging on the part of the Commission. Our chairman has spoken to that, and I wouldn't want to repeat what he said, but generally the objectives are 5. The first one is to create an equal opportunity that affords approximately equal opportunity for eligible persons to stand and compete in elections. Number 2, it also prevents corruption of elections, which is, so to speak, prevent political actors from corrupting elections or monopolizing the process through abuse of state resources. Number 3, impartial enforcement, which prevents the bias and partisan use of enforcement mechanism against political opponents. Number 4, we have keeping out dirty money. And that is not in the literal sense. Preventing the proceeds of corruption or organized crime from infiltrating the political system and influencing public decisions. And lastly, transparency and accountability that requires political parties and candidates to be transparent about how they collect and spend campaign funds. Our history on ECF is as follows. The Constitution of Kenya took a progressive step in advancing election campaign finance reform. Articles 81, 88, 91 and 92 set the principles and standards expected to govern the electoral legal framework. This framework contemplates free and fair elections founded on equality, non-discrimination, and the empowerment of key participants such as candidates. These reforms were expected to advance the constitutional standards of democracy and governance in the post-2010 dispensation. Now, for just clarity of the recommendation of the journey towards the enactment of ECF, it commenced in 2005. The CKRC, that is the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, recommended the introduction of limits to election campaign expenditure. So this journey started in 2005, 2 or so years before the 2007 general election. The Kriegler Commission found that in 2008, after what happened in 2007, that the absence of campaign finance legislation left the ECK of the time unable to regulate campaign financing. And this is what led to the introduction of this particular provision in the current constitution. Article 88(4)(I) was enacted, mandating the IEBC to regulate campaign spending by candidates and political parties. In 2013, in the run-up to the 4th March 2013 general election, Parliament was required to enact the implementing legislation by the end of 2012. Unfortunately, this never came to be, and this act was enacted in December 2013 and assented to in January 2014. The first attempts for the Commission in terms of coming up with regulations commenced in March to July 2016, where the Commission developed draft election campaign financing regulations and held extensive stakeholder consultations. Fast forward to 2016, the draft regulations were submitted to the National Assembly for purposes of ensuring that this law was operationalized. But later, they were revoked. On 16th January 2017, Parliament amended the Election Campaign Financing Act and introduced a Section 2A, where it suspended the regulations or the implementation of the Act until after 2017 general election, which meant that there was nothing the Commission could have done during that time up until 2022. Following the revocation, the Commission moved on swiftly and developed the spending limits and the regulations and submitted them to the National Assembly once again. And the Commission gazetted the campaign finance contributions, the allowable expenditures, and the spending limits for the 9th August 2022 general election. However, on 28 September 2021, National Assembly, acting on the recommendations of the Committee on Delegated Legislation, annulled the gazetted limits and resolved that the Commission to de-gazette them. Now, following the de-gazettement, in October 2021, the Commission de-gazetted the contributions and the spending limits pursuant to the National Assembly's resolution. Following the de-gazettement, Katiba Institute and AFRICOG filed a petition in the High Court challenging the National Assembly resolution to annul the gazetted limits. On 7th January 2022, Transparency International and Mr. Philip Gishana Nyakundi lodged a further petition on the status of the regulations. The two petitions were merged on 24th January 2022. Following the merger, Justice Anthony Murima, in his final disposition of the two petitions, directed the Commission to develop the regulations contemplated under Article 88(4)(I) so that the country has in place the requisite regulations. Allow me to repeat. So that the country has the place has in place the requisite regulations and spending limits. In doing so, the Commission will be promoting constitutionalism. He further held that regulations and Article 88(4)(I) of the Constitution are statutory instruments and not constitutional instruments, and therefore, because of that holding, they do not require parliamentary approval. Section 29(1) of the election campaign financing was also declared unconstitutional as it contravened Articles 10(2)(c) and 88(4) by requiring parliamentary approval for the regulations before gazettement. Section 12, 18, and 19 of the Act do not require parliamentary approval and must be subjected to appropriate public engagement, hence the reason we are engaging the public and stakeholders. Now, on to the highlights of the ECF Regulations 2026. Just like Professor Dul said, if we go into details of what we've gathered, we might take some time. So I will highlight the ECF regulations without going into the details of the clause-by-clause provisions. Now, the campaign expenditure period is prescribed in the Act, but also extrapolated in the regulations. The regulations prescribe the period which campaign financing controls apply, which defines the window within which a campaign contribution, all campaign contributions and expenditure must be received, incurred, recorded, and reported. So for example, in a general election situation, expenditure period begins 6 months before the general election date, and the expenditure period ends on 14 days after declaration of results. Same goes for by-election, which is tied to the date of declaration of the vacancy and terminates 7 days after the by-election results have been declared, and the same applies for a referendum. Governance of campaign financing, it also provides for the appointment, registration, and replacement of authorized persons. Authorized persons are the persons that a candidate or a political party will select for purposes of managing the account that will receive and expend their contributions. It also sets out roles and responsibilities of authorized persons in managing campaign financing and compliance. There are certain roles and responsibilities that the authorized persons have, and it is important that this is provided so that it removes any sort of ambiguity. It also requires the registration of supporting persons and organizations undertaking campaign activities on behalf of a candidate or political parties. Where we have supporting institutions or organizations, it will be important for these institutions to be registered with the Commission for purposes of knowing who is funding who. It also helps the Commission to determine how many institutions or organizations are funding to multiple candidates. Campaign finance accounts, which the chairperson spoke to earlier, it requires candidates, political parties, and supporting organizations to operate a dedicated campaign bank account. It has to be a new bank account that candidates or political parties would require for purposes of monitoring. It also prescribes the management, operation, and closure of those bank accounts and the submission of bank statements once the campaign period is over. On contributions and donations, it requires the sources and receipt of campaign contributions to be given to the Commission. It also provides for loans, self-financing, proxy contributions, Harambee contributions, and anonymous donations. It also prescribes record keeping, issuance of receipts, and reporting requirements to enhance transparency and accountability. The regulations also provide establishment of campaign expenditure committees and defines their responsibilities. Largely, their work is to expend what is in the account. It also prescribes permissible campaign expenditure, which will be shown in the next presentation, and the methodology of determining expenditure limits for candidates, political parties, referenda, and by-elections. It further regulates expenditures incurred by supporting organizations. On reporting, disclosure, and audit, the regulations have made provisions for periodic and final campaign finance reports detailing contributions, expenditure, surplus funds, and supporting documentation. For purposes of periodic, this is 3 months, and the final reports are supposed to be submitted to the Commission 3 months after declaration of the results of an election. Further, there has been a bit of a challenge when it comes to the surplus funds. For independent candidates, there has been maybe a question as to what should happen to the surplus funds, because those who are required, for candidates, they're required to open an institution for purposes of ensuring that the resources are well managed. And for candidates, there's a requirement, for political parties, there's requirement for audit. So that is one of the things that we received during this public participation, and we're going to review that and see how we can strike a balance. It also provides, the regulations also provide for the Commission in terms of the regulation bit to scrutinize the reports that have been submitted by political parties, and the Commission would also be required to ensure that the political parties disclose their contributors and issue a certificate of compliance for those parties and candidates that comply with the mandatory requirements that the Commission will set for purposes of the reports. And it will also have mandatory audits for campaigns exceeding the prescribed expenditure threshold. I'm coming towards the end of this presentation. So for compliance, monitoring, and enforcement, it empowers the Commission to review reports, conduct investigations and audits, and also require additional information where it feels that a party or a candidate has not provided that information, and also provide opportunity for candidates and political parties to rectify the non-compliance. It also provides mechanisms for notices to show cause and enforcement for sanctions under the Act. Finally, there is the aspect of dispute resolution. It is the regulations pursuant to the provisions of the Act establish the framework for lodging, hearing, and determining complaints arising from the Act and the regulations. It also provides for summary determination, where the dispute resolution committee would sit and hear and determine those issues summarily and issue orders, and where there's need for hearing, then summon the respective candidates or the political parties to appear. This is, of course, guided by the overriding objective of expeditious and fair dispute resolution. Then finally, we have the administrative and miscellaneous provisions, which prescribe for procedures for filing notices and reports, which includes electronic submission. And it also provides for retention of campaign finance records, computation of time, issuance of commission directives and guidelines when need arises, and the integration of technology in campaign finance management. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Ruth. I think we proceed with the formula and the limits by Victoria Cheke. Victoria, welcome. I think for those who are not mathematically inclined, the formula will look a bit complicated, but I can assure you she's going to make it very simple and very palatable to all of us. So, karibu Victoria.
Thank you very much. The room is very tense. Now, when you combine that tension with mathematics, it might become worse. So, commissioners, the chair, the vice chair, the commissioners, DCSs, and everybody present. Allow me to relax your mind a bit so that we can concentrate on the mathematics. And I want you to take you back to many years ago. Nikukumbushe mtu mmoja who was very important. Mwalimu wa maths. Unakumbuka mwalimu wa maths? You remember mwalimu wa maths? Alisema hamtafika mbali. Sasa, I want you to remember your mwalimu wa maths who taught you maths. Somehow, some became better than the teacher. So when we present our maths, we'll give you an opportunity to make the proposals and make us better. And finally, as you make the proposals, huyo alimwambia hamtaenda mbali, take this opportunity to tell him or her that you went very far. Not only to make policies for Kadonzweni Primary School, but for the national government in elections. So the math is marking even for the elections. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Victoria Ambuichege, a staff of the Commission and a member of this technical working group on campaign financing. I want to present to you the formula, and before the slides run, I want to simplify the steps in which were undertaken to come up with this formula. First of all, there was an estimation of average costs per ward, per constituency, and per county. Now, those costs were empirically collected or established. The wards, the constituencies were separated into urban, sparsely populated, and other areas. Now, to get the costs, we took an average for all the wards, an average for the constituencies, and an average for the county. Now, after getting the costs, we decomposed the costs into fixed costs and variable costs. Now, the variable costs, the fixed costs are those costs that will not change regardless where. For example, the cost of registering as a candidate. Does it change? Hello? Does it change? So that is a fixed cost. But transport, will it change? Depending on the constituencies, depending on the wards. So now that is an example of a variable cost. So we decomposed the total cost into fixed and variable. Now, in determining the variable costs, we thought of two very important parameters, and that is population and the land area. So when it comes to the ward, we thought about the population in the ward and the land area in the ward. And the weighted allocations were 60% for the population and 40% for the land size. And then finally was now the establishment of the expenditure limit, which is as simple as the fixed cost plus the variable cost, which is determined by the population and the land size. Are we together? Math imekuwa rahisi kabisa. Vice Chair anasema kabisa. I think now we can go to the PowerPoint. Yes. Now, I'll go to slide 26. What counts as the campaign expenses? You know them. We have venues. We have venues. We have publicity materials and all those transportation, election agents, and security. All those were our cost drivers. Right? Then I said we organized the areas into urban, city, or sparsely populated and other areas. And an estimate of the cost was done. If it is a constituency, is it in the urban area? Is it a sparsely populated area? Is it in any other area? Now we aggregated those costs and got an average for each ward and for each constituency and for each county. Now, having said that, I said the costs were split into fixed costs and variable costs. Now, for example, if we look at the ward level, I hope you're on slide 29. If we look at the ward level, the total cost is 3.890400. Now we split into fixed costs and variable costs. The fixed costs 2.2 million 46,500. The variable cost 1,643,900. Right? You can see what we classified as fixed and what we classified as variable. For example, publicity materials are a variable. I'm asking so that I can understand whether we are together. Publicity materials, they are variable costs, right? How about administrative costs? Hello? Administrative costs? Fixed costs. Are we together? So that's how we split the fixed and the variable costs. We go to the constituency. The average cost for the constituencies is 18,178,750. We did the same. We split into fixed and variable costs. Just to check whether we are together. Advertising and media. Is it a variable or a fixed cost? Hello? Advertising and media? You say it is variable. Will it vary across the constituency among the candidates? It will. It will. Now, those are the inputs we want you to give us. But according to these, what we evaluated is that advertising and media may not vary among the candidates. Remember, these are the candidates we are focusing on and how much they are going to spend to do their campaigns. Now, let us look at the county. Now, the total expenditure limit for the county is 50,917,667. We split into two, a fixed cost and a variable cost. Are we together? Yeah? Now, if you go to... Now, having said that, the other computation was to evaluate the variable cost now per what? Per constituency and per county. How did we do this? We took the variable cost per electoral area. Sawa. Now weka hiyo kando. Chukua the total population of the country, which is about 44 million. Sawa sawa. Divide by 1450 wards. You'll get around 32,000 and some hundreds. Now subject that. Now that is the population quota. Subject that to 60%. Are we together? Yes. Now come to the land quota. Pick the entire land mass of the country. Divide by 1450 wards. Then multiply by the land quota, which is 40%. So by doing that, we got the per person unit cost and per square kilometer unit costs. Are we together? I think I have summarized all the way up to, I'm now on slide 35. That is what I have basically said. How we got the quotas, both the population and the land quota. Now, slide 36, we are summarizing now the quotas per ward, per constituency, and per county. We have how many wards? 14, 50, constituencies 290, and county 47. So the population quotas are as prescribed there. Then you subject those to the two ratios, the 60 and the 40. Right? Now, moving on to slide 38, you find now the per person cost in the ward, in the constituency, and in the county. So now, how do we get now the expenditure limit? We pick the fixed cost per ward, for example, plus the unit cost per person times the population of that ward, plus the unit cost per kilometer times the size of that ward in terms of kilometer squares. Now that gives you the expenditure limit for a person aspiring to be an MCA. Now, for a person aspiring to be a member of National Assembly, you pick the fixed cost of the constituency plus the per unit cost in the constituency times the population of that constituency plus the per unit cost of size, land size, times the mass of that constituency in kilometer squares. Now, for a person aspiring to be a governor, the same. You pick the fixed cost of the county plus the population quota times the population of the county plus the land quota times the mass of the county. Now, when we do all that for each and every ward, constituency, and county, we get the upper limits for every ward, for every constituency, and for every county. Now, for the presidential, we aggregated all the costs for the wards, all the costs for the counties, all the costs for the constituencies. We added all of them and got an average. And that's how we got to the 4.4 billion as the upper presidential limit of expenditure. Same case with political parties. This was based on one major assumption that all political parties will field candidates in all electoral areas, and they will field all candidates from MCA up to president. So what did we do? We got all the total costs for the candidates' expenditure in the ward, in the constituency, in the county, and we summed them up to come to 17.712 billion. And that is the maximum allowed limit for political parties to spend. Now, because maths tukiongea sana tutasahau, I want to invite you and give you this opportunity to give us suggestions. Remember, Chairman said these are proposals. So kindly give us proposals, your suggestions, whether you approve the formulas, and show mwalimu wa maths ulienda mbali. Sawa sawa? Thank you so much. I want to take this opportunity and give back to the chair of the ECF committee.
Thank you, Victoria. I hope she has made it simpler for all of us. But I think there is a slide, an important slide on the practical application of the formula to some counties, to Mombasa. So which we can take you through. For example, in Mombasa, this is Nairobi, Kitsuru, Westlands Ward. So the population is 32,187, and the land area is 21.3 square kilometers for Kitsuru. So how does the formula apply? Now for the ward, we say the fixed costs, which apply to all wards in Kenya, is 2,246,500. Then now, you now calculate the variable costs, which is a factor of population of that ward and the area of the ward. So we have the population factor, which is 30.07 times the population of Kitsuru, which is 32,187, plus the area factor, land area factor, which is 1,640, which is constant for all the wards, times area, which is 21.3 square kilometers. So we get a spending limit for the ward in Kitsuru, which is 3,249,295. So you go the same way to Westlands constituency, you do the same, and then to Nairobi County, you do the same. So they'll vary depending on the population and the square, the area of the ward and the constituency and the county. So that is an example of the practical application of the formula. Thank you. So I think I will call upon her to moderate the next session on receiving of it, memoranda, as we progress. Karibu sana DCS operation to take over from there.
Thank you. DCS support services. Yes, hapo ijakuwa ngumu. Those of us who know mathematics. So it's time now to have feedback on what we have gone through. Okay. Let's have feedback on what we have gone through. Maybe in anybody who would like to make a clarification, an amendment. Yes, you'll be number one. Let's have 3. And yes. And
hello,
please,
everybody. My name is Kevin Walumbe. I am from Katiba Institute. I have a concern about the timelines within which the regulations are to become operative. Now, whereas the draft regulations need not be submitted to Parliament for approval, but the regulations, once they are passed at plenary and upon gazettement, they are to be transmitted to Parliament for it to look at whether they comply with the constitutional or legislative mandate. Now, the regulations have to be in place at least 12 months to the elections for them to be effective in the next election. So my concern is whether the gazettement will take place and the transmission will take place before the 12 month timeline, because Parliament, the committee that is responsible, need to make a report within 21 days to say whether the regulations comply with the Constitution and legislation or not, or if it does not make that report, then the gazetted regulations will automatically be operative. So my concern is whether we will be within the timelines. Thank you.
thank you. I hope, Ruth, you're naughty. Next, yes. Please say your name and the organization.
Thank you. My name is Noela Mutanda from the PRSK, and I just want to flip this a little bit. We know how the legislative processes in this country operate. And I'm just listening in terms of what has happened, the stakeholder engagement. I'm seeing a communication gap. And because of those gaps, even good bills, good ideas, good suggestions have actually died at birth. And this is a beautiful thing that the country needs. But the communication gap is quite evident. So we are going to do all the legal processes and it will collapse because there's lack of understanding, there's lack of appreciation of the importance of this particular bit. Just keen and curious to know what the strategy or your plan is from a communication point of view, because this is something that ideally should have been in common parlance, you know? People should have been speaking about it, people should be having an idea about it, the story of how it started, how it collapsed, and why it is important moving forward for this country's democracy process. The communication gap is quite evident, and just curious to know what is the plan, what is the proposal, and how that can actually help to ensure that this bill gets to be enacted. Thanks. These regulations actually get to be adopted. Thank you.
The third one, before you respond? Oh. Thank you. Please, your name and your organization.
Good morning. My name is Sonia Herbert. I'm from the Office of Director of Public Prosecution. I'm here to represent the organization. I've gone through the regulations. I've also had the presentation in regard to the regulations. I don't know whether I'll be skipping or whatever, but my comment on when the presenter was talking about that part of the regulation on dispute resolution, my thought was that it's a bit narrow in terms of it's tailor-made for civil disputes. And when we come in as ODPP and we hear of excesses in spending, definitely there are breaches that have been done, and also there are crimes which have been committed. We cannot rule that one out. And the crimes that when you look at that bit of part 4, and you talk about dispute resolution, and he says that he ran to the judge, there are procedural ways you can do it. One, you report, and if this part will have captured those procedural concerns, and the Office of Director of Public Prosecution is captured there in terms of the reporting mechanism, I think that one can cure for those aspirants who will be coming in the elections to come.
Okay.
So the scope of the dispute resolution needs to be expanded, because I think it's just tailor-made for the complainants who will be complaining in regard to the others that they overspend, and this is what is supposed to be done. So I think that scope needs to be expanded, and in a way also capture the other organization, how the ODPP and IEBC will be dealing with these aspects of crime. Because apart from the crimes I've mentioned, there's also the bribery aspects of it. Those are also crimes which will need to be dealt with in this part. So that is my contribution as per now.
Thank you. Thank you. I was just wondering whether that transaction of Commissioner Hassan was legal. It was an illegal one, isn't it? So this year's response? Let's respond to the 3. Ruth?
Thank you, Madam DCS. To the question from Katiba, I hear what you're saying, and yes, there's need for the timelines, of course, are a concern, but I think we all know that for a long time, when you were hearing the history from Madam Commissioner Mary Karen, when they came in, that is when we had to start the process, and of course there was a lot of issues that were going on. So we still have time to publish the instruments and comply pursuant to Section 11 of the Statutory Instruments Act that require, once we publish the regulations in compliance with the court order, then transmit that statutory instrument to the respective clerk of the National Assembly or the respective clerk of that assembly. And in our case, it will be the clerk of the National Assembly. Within 7 days, then the rest of the process follows. Number 2, there was a question by PRSK. I don't know whether that will be my question or that is a policy question on communication gap. I think hiyo nina peana. Then from Mr. Sonia Herbert from ODPP, yes, you've noted correctly the issue of excess spending. The Campaign Financing Act does provide for offences, and I believe that those offences will not fall within the purview of the IEBC. This, what IEBC will handle is matters relating to the civil nature of complaints that will come before it. So naturally, that will not be within us, where there is an issue of where it's declared an election offence. I believe that that will fall under the Election Offences. It will take the nature of the Election Offences Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ruth. Whom did you hand which commissioner? Question 2.
I think the concerns around communications are very, very valid. And looking at the history of the IEBC, you want me to go there? That we are talking about communication. No, I think, Madam, thank you for raising that concern. And I think communication in Kenya, it's a must. And just right now, I have seen in the social media, there have been reports about what I just said about the misinformation and disinformation that has been going around about the streaming of results. And so, because I said in equal measure, we have to report the truth, the factual truth. And I'm happy some of the media has picked it. So for this commission to build trust and confidence with the Kenyan public and the electorate, we need to invest in communication. When you look at the 2022 general election and the observer reports, all the observer reports pointed out to our weaknesses in communication. That means over time, we did not realize the importance of communication and relating with the people of the Republic, insofar as telling them the correct information at the correct time or at the right time. And that has resulted sometimes to all these issues of lack of trust or low confidence levels and what have you, can be attributed in larger part to that lack of communication. Communication being our ability and capacity to disseminate that information which we have, which is a public good, related to our inability to counter some of the narratives that are negative, that are meant to undermine the integrity of our electoral processes. So when we review the reports from the observer groups, both ELOG, our local observer group, which is a huge group, the European Union, the Commonwealth, the African Union, all the observers mentioned lack of communication from the IEBC. So what are we doing as a new commission? As a new commission, we have realized this is very, very critical for us to address going forward to 2027 and beyond. We need to invest, and we are doing that. We need to revamp our communication systems personnel, and of course to look for resources for us to do that. Communication is expensive. I'm sure you've been in that field for quite some time, and you know it costs money for us to communicate. And in our engagement with the Parliament and Treasury, we are saying IEBC requires money or funding for us to engage with stakeholders, for us to invest in communication, both getting the gadgets, getting the right people to run our communication, so that at any particular time, we're able to give Kenyans the correct information and to clarify certain information that may not be true that are likely to affect the ability of the Commission to discharge its mandate, which is to conduct elections, supervise elections, and of course referenda. So it's in that respect that we are saying, as we move towards 2027, we will improve our capacity to communicate, our abilities to communicate. We will invest in the right tools. We will invest in the right personnel, but also as a cost-saving measure, we will also, that's why we partnered with the Media Sector Working Group, which brings together the Kenya Union of Journalists and the Editors Guild and the media owners. So through that kind of partnership, we will be able to disseminate the correct information at the correct time to Kenyans. And so we believe we will continue partnering with the media, even during our elections, whenever we have an election, and more importantly, the coming 2027 general election. We will, through that MOU, we will have a structured partnership with the media, because these are the outlets that feed information to the public. So we'll have that structured arrangement where the media will support us to disseminate as the results come out from the polling stations at the constituency tallying centers up to the national tallying center. The media will be there working with us in a structured manner to disseminate factual and correct information to the Kenyan public. We wouldn't want to see a very sad situation where there's distortion of information, especially on sensitive information, such as the election results. Because when you report wrong results, it will, it will agitate Kenyans, and it might result to tension and unnecessary backlash. So that's why we signed that MOU, I think it was this year, early this year, with the Kenya Media Sector Working Group. And we hope that we will walk that journey to ensure that come 2027, as we undertake all the electoral processes up to the end, and the most important one being giving Kenyans the returns, the results that's, of the elections, we will work together to ensure we coordinate and we communicate better, and we minimize incidences of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, which have become so rampant everywhere. So these narratives, if we don't control them as Kenyans, and we all have responsibilities, because as long as you have the rights, you also have responsibilities in a corresponding manner. So we expect all Kenyans, whether in the media, in civil society, in government institutions, in private sector, to take that responsibility to ensure that we fight this menace of misinformation, disinformation, and malinformation, because it's likely to injure our democracy. It's likely to compromise the integrity of the elections. It's likely to result us to take us to violence. Because if you report the wrong things, what will happen? Kenyans might react negatively, and that will have consequences. So it's my humble appeal, in as much as the IEBC is strengthening its systems to communicate better to the public, we also call upon those of us who are in the social media space, which is very vibrant in Kenya, those of us in mainstream media, to exercise caution and responsibility, to ensure that you fact check. You check with us whether whatever information you want to post and publish is true or not. So it's a responsibility for all of us, I must say. But as IEBC, you will see us moving forward. We will be engaging with Kenyans, and we will also call upon Kenyan professionals in the media and public relations field to come forward and support us in one way or another. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. Another round of applause for Chairman. Last round of questions. No reservation, okay. The last one there. Right there.
Good morning.
Morning.
My name is Brian from Transparency International. My question is in regard to affirmative action. The regulations and the formulas given have not offered affirmative action measures for persons with disability, for youth, and for women. So maybe we can get a response on how the Commission intends to improve the regulations to include these affirmative action measures, especially based on the objective that the measures are meant to provide an equal field or a playing field for all candidates. However, we know that these special groups need further affirmative action measures to enable them to effectively participate in campaigns and in elections matters. Thank you.
You got it?
Thank you for that question. On the question of ensuring that we have considered the special interest groups, the marginalized groups, like the youth and women, persons with disabilities, we did receive feedback in the public participation fora, and we will be retreating to review some of the parameters of the formula so that we see how best we can have inclusion for persons with disability, the youth, and women. So that is not something that I will be able to answer now, but it is something that you're going to review next week. Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ruth, for that response. I think we come to the end. Since there are no reservations, we come to the end of this consultative meeting. I wish to report that I was in Kakamega on Tuesday, and quite a number of questions or feedback we received, which we'll communicate to our committee led by DCS Support Services. But the three most important that came out in Kakamega region, which comprised of Busia, Bungoma, and Vihiga, and Kakamega itself, is that people are worried how IEBC or the Commission is going to enforce these election campaign financing regulations. And two, they said that the spending limits should not be a straitjacket, especially for the disabled or people with disability. They said their expenses are quite different from normal people. And they wondered also how we are going to take care of inflation as a commission. So I think that will come up in the final document. But I must thank those who have raised their concerns. This morning. And allow me now to give a vote of thanks for those who have attended, and of course starting with our policymakers, the chairperson, commissioners, asanteni sana, and the following organizations who have attended this morning: PRSK, Public Relations Society of Kenya, asante sana; CAJ, Commission of Administration of Justice; FPPAA, Foreign Association, whatever; Baraza Civil, TI Kenya, ELJA, ODPP, DBA, CRA, Kenya Legal League of Interpreters, Sign Language Interpreters, Media Council of Kenya, thank you so much. Judiciary Committee on Elections, which was represented by Justice Tuyot, thank you so much. Office of Registrar of Political Parties, Vision Limited, Association of Media Women in Kenya, Katiba Institute, Welfare Policing Oversight Authority, and journalists from various media houses. Asanteni sana for coming, and wish to confirm that also we don't take your presence and contributions here for granted. We'll put them into perspective and ensure that the final document will incorporate your views that you have brought up in this forum. Thank you, and allow me to hand over back this meeting to the MC. Purity, thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Madam DCS, and thank you to all of you. So there's tea served outside, and there is also lunch. So I request us to ensure that we consume the food from the commission, and I wish you all a good day. And thank you for coming. Have a good afternoon.
Yeah.